That, by the way, that's a car I would like to be in. You, Sonny Bunch, Sarah Longwell, and Tim Miller in a car together, driving from Dallas to Austin. It would be like the Blues Brothers.
It sounds like
I hope you stop at
It sounds like a bad movie from the 80s or 90s, and I hope anyway, as we break down and Tim is jacking up the car to replace the tire somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Texas. It'll be great.
Hello, everyone. This is JVL here with my dear friend, old friend of years, friend of tears, Bill Kristol, sitting in for Sarah Longwell. Even though she's in a hotel room like 30 feet away from you, she could not do the show this morning, but you could.
Some of us just suck it up. And, of course, I left the reception after our excellent panel, I'm going to say, here in Dallas last night. I left at 10 o'clock when the reception ended, and like a normal person, if I could say. I went back to my hotel room, and so I got some sleep before writing morning shots this morning. Who knows where Sarah and Tim were, right? I mean, I don't know. The wild locations, the nightlife, and down.
They normally go out with people afterwards.
Yeah,
so the normal state of affairs after these events, like Tim leads, like the Pied Piper, or anybody from the show. Anybody from the audience who wants to go hang out, like he's like, I found a bar, let's all go.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah, I'll ask them when I see them in an hour about nightlife in downtown Dallas and how it's doing. But it was an excellent event. I'll just report to you briefly, since you were asked after and missed, of course, and it wasn't the same. But first week of school, I know you got obligations, but it was great. I mean, people in packed house, maybe 500 people, I think, in this big theater and right in the arts center of Dallas. And I talked with them all afterwards, not all, but I talked with many of them afterwards. And I was struck by this. I've done many events like this over the years. Weekly Standard, we had a lot, but also at others. And our readers and our supporters and the people who come to this event are very nice people and very sane people. I mean, not every single one.
They're normal.
But 90%, 95% normal, and really 85, 90% very impressive. I mean, many interesting backgrounds, diverse. I mean, diverse in many ways, but just in terms, there were people in Dallas, right? So many people who worked in the Bush White House, and they met me a couple times then, or they met some of us, and here they are, there where we are in terms of politics. Many liberal, sort of traditional Texas liberals or Dallas liberals. So happy to see us here, where they're busy fighting the good fight here in Texas. Younger people, college students, older people. It really cheered me up, I got to say.
That's good. I mean, it would be nice. George W. Bush is certainly where we are all in his heart. I'm certain Laura Bush is where we are all in our hearts, but hasn't done anything. The person who has is Liz Cheney. Adam Kinzinger, too, who was there last night.
Yeah.
But I want to talk briefly about Liz Cheney, because this was the week where she said she's going to vote for Kamala Harris. I feel the need every time we talk about Liz Cheney to reiterate that I was wrong about her, in that when Liz Cheney began to move against Trump following January 6th, I was deeply skeptical. And I was just like, what does she want, a cookie? She was there for all, she was there in 2016. She was there, voted for him in 2020. Did she not see the thing? And I couldn't have been more wrong about her. And this is, she is like the beau ideal of what you want from a person of real conscience, which is that she realizes that she was wrong about Trump, and she is trying to make amends on that and fight the good fight, and is willing to do so at great personal cost. And I just think it's so impressive, and I misjudged her, and she doesn't care. She has no idea who I am.
That's not true.
But I feel bad about it. And
I talked to her about. She's an extremely diligent and attentive reader and viewer of Bulwark, of all matters Bulwark, and so she, I sure appreciates your acknowledging that you were wrong. I don't know that you said that very much, but maybe that's what you said privately or something. I was wrong in a different direction, which is I thought I was in touch with Liz and Adam Kinzinger in those weeks between November 3rd and January 6th. I do think she really had a sense of what Trump was doing. Not a sense, she really understood what Trump was trying to do with the Defense Department and the Justice Department in a way that a lot of other people did. January 6th was awful, the riot, the insurrection, but she understood the real attempt to use the instruments of government to overturn the results of the election, and it radicalized her in an appropriate and good way. I mean, and made her just absolutely determined that this not happen again. And then she was willing to see through the implications of what she had seen and put her political career at risk, as was Adam. I mean, I had made the opposite mistake, which is I assumed, well, they're the thin edge of something, and they're going to be dozens, maybe not hundreds of members of Congress, but dozens of members of Congress and dozens of political leaders in the Republican Party who are going to go on the Cheney-Kinzinger path. And maybe it'll be even a viable path in 2024 for a candidate, but certainly a viable, if minority path for a good chunk of the party in 2022 and 2024. And I mean, I was wrong. I remember talking to Kinzinger. He and I were reminiscing about this just the other day. I think that January 7th or 8th, so it was later that week, maybe Friday the 8th. Is that right? It was the 6th of Tuesday, so Friday the 9th. I mean, something like that. And on the phone. And I said, so, I mean, it's great what you said, and Liz has been fantastic, and others have spoken up. What do you think the votes will be on impeachment was coming up the next week in the House? What do you think the votes will be? What do you think? I guess we won't get a majority, right? But maybe 50, 60? I mean, I think that would be important. And Adam was, they're drifting away as we speak. And I said, how bad? It could go down to a dozen or 10. I said, oh, no, that's impossible. Mike Gallagher, who's a friend of Adam's and mine, the young congressman from Wisconsin, was on, he went on live on TV from his office on the 6th, expressing despair and anger, and this could never be tolerated. And they all, really almost all capitulated. 10 votes. I mean, I come back to that always. 1 week after January 6th, 10 votes in the House for impeaching Donald Trump. And why was that such a costly vote? Trump was a lame duck, at least 10 days left. There wasn't another election for a year and a half, 2 years, but a year and a half in terms of primaries. You would have time to explain your vote and presumably, convince people that you did the right thing. And instead, just premature capitulation. And then, of course, the Senate a month later, 7 votes to convict. So that part of it, I don't know. You think after 4 years, I wouldn't have been too, 5 years, I wouldn't have been too optimistic. And I wasn't that optimistic. I wasn't crazy. And I saw what was happening pretty quickly, as we all did after that next week. But that part is just, I don't know. We've been through it all so much. We've said it so many times. But I still find that just hard to stomach, don't you? I mean, the degree of capitulation, the thoroughness of it, the disingenuousness of it all. I don't know.
For me, it's something more, actually. It's that the number of Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger types, by which I mean people for whom January 6th was the tipping point that radicalized them, that number is dwarfed by the number of people who have come to support Trump after January 6th.
Yeah, that's a very
so
important.
People who were sort of on the fence about him and, or had they weren't, God knows, they weren't Biden people, but they were still holding out for good republicanism. The Pete Mayers of the world, Eric Erickson, a longtime friend of mine. And there are more people who had held out against Trump and then have since January 6th gotten on board with Trumpism than there are the opposite direction. And that to me is, I do not understand how if you had basically held the line on Trumpism for 4 years and then January 6th happened, how then you wind up on, it's astonishing to me.
No, that's
absolutely
really
astonishing.
That's a really an important point and a depressing one. And also among voters, I mean, we're happy that Harris has had a good 6 weeks or so. She's gained. She's had a tad, maybe even in the overall electoral college, had a bit in the national popular vote by 3 to 4 points. She's not quite where Biden was in 2020.
Nope.
And what hadn't happened when people voted in 2020 was January 6th, right?
Yeah.
And what has happened is January 6th and everything else since then. And the idea that the public is pointed to more pro-Trump right now than they were 4 years ago is really, just same point.
I think it's likely Trump gets a higher vote share by like 0.2 of a point, right? So he was 46.9, I think, in 2020. Right. It will not surprise me at all if he is a 1/10 or 0.2 of a point higher in his vote share number this time around, which is such an indictment of America that I mean, can you imagine attempted a violent insurrection, and instead of being punished by voters is rewarded with increased support? I mean, that's the sort of thing that when I sit and think about it, I just think, well, why are we bothering to fight? Because this is not sustainable. You can't, all of this doesn't work if that's what the citizenry is like. Because God forbid, this is a very real question, Bill. What if we were in a recession right now, right? Joe Biden achieved a soft landing, which is tremendous. It's really one of the most impressive domestic economic feats that it's not just him. The Federal Reserve did a tremendous job. But the Biden administration's policies, Noah Smith has gone into this, should get a fair amount of credit for this as well. But what if that hadn't happened? What if we were in a recession right now? I believe Donald Trump would be on track to win an outright plurality of the vote, maybe even an outright majority. And you just can't live in a world where the Democratic Party has to win every time and there can never be a recession. Like that's you can't live like that. We can't go on like that.
No, well, we can't. We shouldn't, and maybe we can move in the other direction after this November, though. No, and just to accentuate your point even more, and it's not as if even January 6th happened, that was over. Trump sort of semi-apologized. The party kind of said, okay, that's not going to happen again. And, so, okay, voters foolishly talked themselves into believing these new assurances. There are no new assurances. There's an embrace of January 6th. He's going to pardon them all. The party is on board with the notion that nothing serious happened. And furthermore,
they were great patriots.
They were patriots. And furthermore, there's been a really striking when you go back and look at where MAGA world was. They were pretty crazy and pretty deplorable, if I can put it that way, in late 2020. And Trump was president and he was trying to do all these things. They also could kid themselves, though, more easily than they can today that, well, it wasn't so terrible. The guardrails held, Bolton, McMaster, the whole fence bar, the whole familiar thing. They're not great. I mean, from our point of view, they're bad, but whatever. They're not, they weren't quite, people had the sense maybe when they voted last time that that would be what it would be like in another Trump term. You can't believe that now. You can't believe that MAGA hasn't continued to self-radicalize in the way authoritarian movements do over the last 3-4 years. It's one of the most striking things. In normal politics, I think you've written about this, normal politics, you go too far one way, the system kind of pulls you back the other way, and the voters do. And, there's a kind of zigzaggy but somewhat self-correcting character to normal democratic interest group politics, two-party interest group politics, if you put it that way. So that's been the virtue of the American system. Political scientists have written whole books about this. Authoritarian movements go in the opposite way. They radicalize, and they keep on radicalizing until they're forced to stop for some reason or other. I haven't
or they win.
Studied,
right.
Or they win.
Or they win.
In which case they can continue to self-radicalize. Sometimes they then, at some point, go into just bureaucratic paralysis and sort of just drifting, if you want, or kind of a Brezhnevian kind of world. But they often radicalize for decades after winning Stalin, Hitler, and so forth. I mean, and the craziness gets crazier, and that's certainly happened. I don't know that people fully appreciate that. I'm not sure. I at times don't. How crazy the MAGA world is today compared to even where it was 4 years ago. The conspiracy theorizing is way beyond where it was and much broader and deeper than it was 4 years ago. Ron Johnson, an idiotic, an idiot Wisconsin Republican senator, but not actually, but never the craziest, right? I mean, sort of a business guy, was a business guy, sort of Tea Party-ish, but kind of conventional. I just saw the other day, he said somewhere,
close to the median Republican senator. I would say. Right.
And
10 years ago, you would have said, if you were going to plot the Republican Senate from crazy to sane, the median number, Ron Johnson lives right around that, right?
And he's from Wisconsin, a swing state. He's not, Tommy Tuberville. Okay, so he said just the other day, in passing in an interview, got no attention at all, that he thought the Great Depression it was some kind of conspiracy. It was a plot. It didn't happen. They wanted it to happen. He doesn't quite understand how, but he's kind of become convinced of it. They just throw these things out, and I think, but I take it he's being sincere. There's no political reason to say that particularly. And so again, the depth and craziness of the conspiracy mongering, of the radicalization, of the just continued willingness to accommodate more and more extreme characters and points of view and attacks on our democracy and on civil liberties and on other groups and so forth. I mean, that's happened. And again, as you say, they've paid no price politically. I mean, they did in some key states, Austria and Pennsylvania and Michigan, they paid a price politically in the gubernatorial races in 2022. Voters don't like the extremism if it's made clear enough to them. But in the overall picture of things, and certainly with regard to Trump personally, he's managed to, here we are, right? I mean, Trump is head of a more radical, more authoritarian, clearly more authoritarian movement with clearly much more authoritarian ambitions for a Trump second term. And as you say, he may well do better than he did in 2020.
And Democrats have to get everything right every time. This is the other thing. I mean, I am sorry. Parties. Hey, Sarah, there's more show.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Are we still talking? We have more talking?
We're still talking. The talking goes on. But that's only for the people who are inside the Velvet Rope, the Bulwark Plus members.
Oh, they got to subscribe.
Yeah. Tell them to subscribe. Tell the people,
You should subscribe,
Sarah.
Guys. Why wouldn't you subscribe? You get all kinds of things. You get some extra me and JVL. You get some extra me and George Conway. You get JVL's Triad. It's one of the best things the Bulwark offers. I read it at least once or twice a week.
Yes. Go and subscribe. We'd love to have you.